Since I started covering Tesla in 2018, every week there's been a new story about how, oh my God, Elon Musk wrote the worst tweet in the world. Have you seen these tweets? They're so horrible. And the subjects have changed, whether it's a British cave diver being a pedophile, funding secured, you have said the actual truth, whatever.
Welcome to the Gigacast. I'm your host, Gav, here today with Sawyer, Omar, and Farzad. And today we have to talk about Elon Musk. He is on the crusade of a lifetime right now. If you have not gone ahead and turned on notifications for his Twitter, you're missing out on primetime entertainment and just an absolute barrage of kind of left and right attacks. He's coming at everybody. Elon wants heads. He's holding up chainsaws in photos. Farzad, what the heck is going on?
Great question. By the way, you sound so sexy today.
Oh, yes. This is my raspy voice for the audience.
Your raspy voice. Very, very nice. Yeah, I mean, I think this one's going to be a fascinating thing to talk through because one of the trends I've noticed with what's going on with the Elon discussion today is that I'm getting a lot of flashbacks to previous times following Elon's companies. If you think about his time at Tesla back in the late 2010s, when he was vastly under pressure, trying to bring Tesla profitable. He had that whole incident with the submarine with the one guy, and I'm not going to repeat the comments that were said, but that was a whole bunch of stuff that happened online. And there's been other times too where Elon, I think when he feels attacked by somebody, he punches back twice as hard. And I think that's a repeating theme. I think the complexity with this time is that it's the attention on that individual now. One of the biggest tech titan in the world, top tier elite engineer, top tier elite builder, but he's also now, a politician. He is now kind of a politician, and I think that's fair to say. And so what that does, especially as involved as he is with the discourse, given that he owns X, right? The amount of attention that's going to be on him, it's going to be 100, 1,000 times what it was before. And it's not like Elon is doing anything different. I think Elon's being Elon, but it's now more people are like, oh shit, what's happening, right? Like why is he acting like this? Why is he saying these things, so on and so forth? And this is not to excuse what he's saying. This is not to say, okay, this is what he should be saying on X yesterday. I told him you need to go to sleep, go take a nap. Like you're like, let's take a little bit of a breather, right? But I don't think it's anything new, but it is a recurring theme. So that's how I view it. I've seen this play out before multiple times. It's a completely different context. It's a different arena. It's not politics. A lot more emotions are involved. It's way more existential now because now you're talking about tribalism in the truest sense, especially at the extremes of each political party. It's just Elon being Elon in an arena that's orders of magnitude bigger than the arena he usually plays in.
I think most people, when they used to hear about Elon, it was sort of through the Tesla and SpaceX news lens, whereas now it's very different. They're hearing from him directly. X is more relevant than ever. I mean, if you want to learn about what's going on in the world, you go to X. And Elon has always had sort of colorful commentary, as us Tesla investors know. I went all in Tesla stock in 2018, and that year was probably before 2020, of course. That was his crazy year of tweets ever. I mean, you had the pedo thing, you had this 420 going private tweet. You even had Ron Barron reach out to Elon privately with a letter being like, "Hey man, like maybe let's cool it down a little." Obviously, he didn't, but so. I sort of replied to you yesterday, Omar. Farzad, in that, we saw a headline where the USDA accidentally fired some individuals it shouldn't have. And Doge, we know is going through a lot of firings. And it reminded me of the Supercharger team last year. Elon sort of abruptly fired the whole team. Yeah. And they realized, oh, wait, we actually need a few of these people back. So they rehired them. And that's what they're doing in some of these agencies. And, I personally don't love the way that Elon goes about all of his X comments. The way he says retarded a lot to people, don't love that. But
him and Grok both, right?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I've long accepted Elon's just going to be Elon. And as a Tesla investor, I've come to expect that for years now. So And he's not going to change. Like, as much as his friends or close family may be like, hey, cool it down, or maybe don't say this, Elon's always going to be Elon. And that's partly why a lot of people like him. You're always getting the real Elon. You're not getting some fake person, right? So what you see is what you get, kind of.
He's almost like this like relatable figure right now, I think, for a lot of the people who were, Democrats at one point, and then like the left side of things went so far and now they're kind of snapping back. But he's kind of like if you took that person and like filled them with ketamine and gave them, unilateral power and basically were like, here's the largest audience in the world and you could just go and talk to it. And it's like, okay, take all that passion and emotion of snapback and just now go, you're live. That's what it feels like.
How Elon used to be sort of the darling child of the left. I grew up in Massachusetts, which is very liberal. And now it's the complete opposite, where like the right loves him and the left, like a lot of the left hates him now. Like a lot of the people that I know that are Democrats don't like Elon anymore because of some of the things he says or what he's doing. And it's wild because Tesla, it used to be you viewed as such like a liberal sort of hippie brand earlier on in the early days. And now it's like people are being accused of driving right-wing mobiles. It's just like, what a turn.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the side effect of being political. Like I think from a sales perspective, and I think from a long-term perspective, I don't view this as a consequential thing for the brand truly, especially as they go down market. I don't think people don't have time to care about what he thinks or says politically. But I think from a amount of target perspective and the discourse perspective for the people that are actively in it, it obviously is going to shift the discussion vastly. But I think the key takeaway for me, though, is not like the Democrat Party was a saint either when it came to Elon, right? I think this is sort of, we're seeing in my opinion, we're seeing the byproduct of the Democrat Party actively pushing him away as an asset, especially under the Biden administration, publicly at least, right? With Biden not inviting him to.
What a strategic mistake that was.
Terrible. Yeah, it was truly as I think as an American, I think again, not a perfect individual, but I think I still very firmly believe that he's a net positive to society, vastly net positive, especially through his businesses. And I think to not harness that talent and know what you have, and instead trying to make it into a political sort of coin that you can play with to try and win votes, that backfired massively. But now the thing with Elon now is that he's not going to shut up about it. That's you've created a monster in a sense, right?
Yeah.
For your own party. Yeah.
I think a lot of people like to live in a constant state of comfort. And a lot of people don't like to take risks. Elon is the type of guy that pushes all of his chips on the table over and over again.
Yeah.
And he likes to just constantly disrupt things. He doesn't live in a state of comfort at all. He's always been in the uncomfortable state. He likes to push his teams to the max. So I think a lot of people are not aware of his style of approach in terms of management. And it does cause chaos. And now we're seeing it brought to the government in a way that the U.S. has never seen. It's really interesting to see unravel.
What do you think, Omar?
Look, since I started covering Tesla in 2018, every week there's been a new story about how, oh my God, Elon Musk wrote the worst tweet in the world. Have you seen these tweets? They're so horrible. And the subjects have changed, whether it's a British cave diver being a pedophile, funding secured, you have said the actual truth, whatever. And at the time, people go, oh my God, this is it. He's fallen off. He's lost it. This is the end of him. And in that time, he's only gotten more successful, more powerful, and the valuation of his companies have only increased. So this is just kind of one of his things. Maybe you could call it one of his vices, or maybe it's one of the secrets to his success. He just loves tweeting crazy shit. He loves getting in fights with people. And that doesn't mean he's right about everything, right? Nobody's right about everything. But when you look at Grok 3, now the most powerful AI model in the world, who expected XAI to leapfrog OpenAI? Nobody. You look at what's happening with FSD, the launch of the new Model Y. These things often don't get talked about very much because people are focused on these dramas that always seem so huge at the time, but then people forget them. And next week it's on to the next drama. So, over the time that Elon's been posting all of these horrible tweets, these tweets have essentially gotten him into the White House, thrown out the government that was oppressing him and his companies, and has propelled the valuation of Tesla stock to a new all-time high. So I just kind of laugh a little. I mean, this guy is always getting into some shit. Imagine you're running all these companies. You're building a rocket. You're trying to make electric cars that are profitable, make them drive themselves safely, implanting computer chips in people's brains. Then you got all these baby mamas fighting over you and they're posting on Twitter. And, imagine the stress. And you're in the public eye in this way where people are scrutinizing your every move. And you're going to tell me you'd be able to keep your cool and everybody would like you as you're dealing with all this? A lot of investors will say, hey, look, I don't want to touch this stock. There's just so much drama. But that has always been the alpha for Tesla investors. While everybody's distracted by all this nonsense of the week, there's other things going on behind the scenes. This week, Grok 3, a new FSD release, for example, that get far less attention than the tabloid stuff that he's doing every week.
Now, I will bring up that. So I agree entirely there, but I do think the arena that he's doing that in now with politics, I think the tribalism and extremism that could appear from the other side. So we saw, what was it? The one Tesla store got shot up or something. I don't know if it was with a real gun or BB gun or whatever. Like that is one of the potential risks that. What was it?
It was a real gun. Yeah,
it was a real gun.
Investigating it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if Tesla Q is going to do that, but the extreme left might do that. Right. So I think that's one variable that has changed here is that there is I was never legitimately concerned about his safety truly, but now I'm legitimately concerned for his safety. Like I'm legitimately concerned that, okay, what if he activates, because you really think about like the trend of politics, the trend of different governments around the world. Political violence is it's prevalent. Right. And I'm not saying that the United States is devolving into political violence, but talk about introducing a risk factor that wasn't there before. Like you can talk shit about companies. You can talk shit about, your company's the best and Tesla's the best and, whatever, and within the context of business building. But when you're introducing now the extremities of true tribalism, when it comes to the existential nature of politics, that's a door that it's very unpredictable. Right. And so like up to this point, for me, it was, I don't really put too much credence on the facts like, hey, Elon's getting, even through the Trump election, right? At least he was sticking to the platform that he was trying to push forward. Now it's just active fighting. It's just active fighting, at least for the last few days. So, anyway, just something a risk factor I want to bring up.
One of the biggest risks as a Tesla investor for years has always been the massive key man risk with Elon.
Yeah.
And as you said, as he enters the political arena and he starts to create even more enemies, it does worry me a little bit as a Tesla investor, for sure.
I wonder if part of that's what's making him act out stronger, and comes to you in a second, Omar, here, is the access that he has now within the government. And specifically right now that he has Doge behind the scenes actually digging up and uncovering information. I wonder if that's really lit this fire underneath him to the next level of him saying beforehand, hey, I believed I knew all these things that the government was doing wrong and that people were doing wrong, but now I have actual proof. And now that's why I'm taking it to social media every single day. I could be wrong, but to me, like that seems to be something that would push him further.
Yeah. I knew there would be a lot of political pushback getting involved in the White House in this way, but it has been shocking to see all the calls for violence. I mean, we're coming out of an election where the elected president was shot in the ear, and they actually attempted to assassinate him another time, reportedly at Mar-a-Lago. You'd think coming out of that kind of an election, we'd say as Americans, look, I can disagree with you, but I'm not going to try and kill you. I'm going to go to the ballot box. I'm going to try and make change through official, elected means, legal means. But you've seen people say somebody needs to Luigi Mangione, Trump, and Musk. You've even seen Congress people come out and say, hey, people need to bring real weapons to this fight, and then act surprised when, the FBI is questioning them about this rhetoric. I mean, say what you want about his politics, how harmful his tweets are, whatever, but this is a democracy, not a country where, we want to see violence in our political system. And I wish more democratic leaders would actually denounce that kind of violence, say, look, there's no place for this in our political process. And honestly, when you have a media that is inflating a lot of these issues, trying to make everything seem like the end of the world, it does contribute to a climate where I think people are encouraged to take violent actions.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Let's lean a little bit more into the Doge side of things, since that is a huge topic and it's really behind his tweets. Evan, if you could pull up Elon's timeline for a second, you'll see that a lot of what he's talking about is those payments that have gone, right? Billions, if not trillions of dollars that they're trying to recover, all different types of items like that. And then, of course, there's a lot of Grok stuff that'll be coming through there as well. And he even changed his header to Grok 3 as well. So there's a lot of those different items that have been a part of this. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts on Doge as a topic. Farzad, you've had some videos that have been doing killer on this. What do you think people are most interested in when it comes to Doge and everything that they're doing?
Yeah, I think the theme here is you're applying Tesla, SpaceX type culture to the federal government, which to me is it was unthinkable a couple of years ago, and now I'm drooling at the prospect. It's you're going from a like, the more I think about this, the more crazy it is, and it really highlights just how crazy of a time we live in. We went from having the federal government being one of the least risk take on entities in the country, with some of the safest, most bureaucratic, most layered, slowest, dysfunctional bodies in the entire country, to one that is trying to adopt the most elite culture when it comes to moving quickly and being productive and generating results, right? Damn it, how you get there, we're going to get there, and we're going to figure out how to get there. So the contrast couldn't be more of a 180. It's the most insane shift in culture that I think I've seen a body take, right? And so with that comes a gigantic amount of opportunity and possibility. Doge has openly said they're trying to Doge will allow the balancing of the budget, right? I think the most interesting thing here is hearing people that are actively against Doge's mission, which is to remove fraud, waste, and abuse, which is wild to me because a huge majority of the country agrees that's the right thing to do. I think reasonable people will disagree on the approach that the Doge is taking. But I think if you really think about the track record of a Musk-led initiative, regardless of how you feel about him, he clearly has an elite track record to taking things that don't work and making them work, especially as it pertains to cutting costs and making things work better and leveraging technology to make things work better. And he's been in different domains doing this already. He went from banking to electric vehicles to reusable rockets to social media. X is more profitable now than when he bought it from Twitter, right? And now he's applying it to the federal government, which is the mother of all low-hanging fruits, right? I mean, for the one thing that he brought up was they didn't have a reliable way at the Treasury to track payments, to track the outflow of cash. People didn't know where it was impossible to audit where the money's going. Talk about a low-hanging fruit. And then you ask yourself the question, if that's true, right? What else is out there for us to capitalize on? And then as a business person, you're probably like, okay, there's probably 50% here we can cut realistically if we really wanted to push the envelope, right? So I think from that perspective, it's incredible. It's just that approach. Elon's approach is unorthodox, even in business building, because it's optimizing for the optimal solution. And the optimal solution is difficult to find unless you maximally push the boundaries. And you push the boundaries by deleting. You have to delete, you have to delete, you have to delete, right? So I personally think it's It's much needed. It's the only way to get the United States to a sustainable path forward. We can agree and disagree about the approach and some of the nuances and maybe some of the rhetoric that's out there for sure. But I think on the whole, net, this is going to be a smashing success long term. And a lot of the chaos now is just an unorthodox approach that's being applied to a body that is the opposite of unorthodox. It's the most regulated, most bureaucratic, slowest, inefficient body that the United States has had for decades.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing with Doge is just classic Elon. Like, he comes in like a wrecking ball. The media cries bloody murder, and Elon has no interest in managing the optics of how things are going down. You know, we did sort of see this with,
he actively hurts himself.
Yeah, he likes to shoot himself in the foot for sure.
Yeah,
but we saw this with Twitter. He fired 80% of the staff, and then people said Twitter wouldn't be able to function properly. And then, well, actually, no. It turns out it can function just fine. And might I add that, and you said this, Farzad, X's financials have improved vastly since Elon actually bought it. A couple of weeks ago, I think the Wall Street Journal reported that, while revenue was down about 50% to 2.7 billion, I think since Elon bought it, EBITDA has doubled to 1.25 billion, and margins have gone from 13% to 46%.
Think about that.
Meaning the company as a whole is a lot more efficient. So I think Elon, like you said, Farzad, Elon's taken the sort of first principles approach and thinking to the government. He's definitely going to upset a lot of people along the way. But like with Twitter, I think we're going to see a government on the other side that's a lot more efficient. And when you're sick and you have the flu, you sort of have this, you have to wait for your immune system sort of kick into high gear and beat the sickness. And the US government has been sick for a while, I think. And let's consider Elon and Doge the immune fighting response here. They're sort of going to get rid of the sickness, get rid of the wasteful spending, the fraud. And I think they're going to make the government just a lot more efficient. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out.
What's crazy? It's like they're the immune fighting response, and they're generating an immune fighting response to the immune fighting response.
Love it.
Like you're just layering immune fighting response. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Actually, one thing I wanted to add was one thing I don't know is whether the changes that Elon and Trump are making with Doge can be actually long lasting, because they're not taking a legislative approach with Doge. That I think would slow them down. I think that's what Vivek Ramaswamy wanted to do. He wanted to take the legislative approach, but Elon was like, no, I wanted to take the technological approach to this. And I think that is the right approach, by the way.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can't have a legislative approach that sticks unless you have the technology to actually execute it, right? Because that's the underlying variable here. You can legislate. I mean, we've legislated for 250 years, and this is where we've ended up, right? Even under the Clinton Gore administration, where they balanced the budget and they generated a surplus for that one year or whatever it was. I think it was his last year in office, full year in office. 25 years later, we're in the worst spot we've ever been in. One of the worst spots we've ever been in. So that approach wasn't long lasting. You had 9/11, you had 2008, you had a bunch of things, but that's what happens when you're a country. You're going to go through insanity. That's just what happens to be alive and to be in reality. And technology will allow you to actually uphold the legislative process long term, because it's going to make it very easy to actually execute against the legislature and against executive orders if you don't have that underlying thing. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think
1,000%.
If you're someone that's skeptical about what Elon and Doge is doing, my advice would just be, let's just see how it goes. Like, obviously, the way that things are going in the government, not sustainable. So, like, let's just try this. Let's see what Elon and Trump and Doge can do. And then let's see where we end up on the other side. If the results are bad, then obviously there'll be a reverse probably. So,
and we have a judicial system that by and large works really well. I mean, we just had a bunch of stuff brought to courts, and these were Obama appointed judges. Some of them stuck. Some of them said, no, Trump and Elon can keep going. Doge can keep going. So clearly we have a system that this is what checks and balances are, right? I think this is the thing that was driving me nuts before. It's like, well, this is unconstitutional. Doge is doing this. This is crazy. It's like, no, like Congress needs a check and balance. Like we're just giving Congress way too much power here, y'all. Like this is, you are allowing Congress to have the power to just push everything through, force expenditures on everybody, right? And then there's no check and balance on the other side. That's the opposite of having a check and balance system. You have you have a system of government where you're separating the powers. You can't expect one piece of it to have all the power. And Can't have it.
I think it comes down to something that Elon said a lot of times, which is sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? And at the end of the day, we should just know where money's going, how it's being spent. I actually saw a tweet, and there's some members of Congress that have been in favor of this for a while. There was a tweet from Thomas Massey that he quote tweeted, and then Elon quote tweeted yesterday. And this was a tweet from 2020 or 2021, where he mentioned, he said, Congress just passed $1 billion for spending with media outlets to promote COVID vaccines. He goes, which media outlets are getting this money? How much? How is it being spent? This was 5 years ago that people in Congress are tweeting this. There was just no transparency. And what I find is when you have no transparency, people start doing the wrong thing, right? There's no accountability. Oh, we'll shift a little bit of money here. We could really use it for our own personal cause, right? Items like that. When you know that people are going to be able to see all your steps, you have no choice but to uphold to a higher level of quality.
Yeah, I don't think what we're seeing with Doge ever could have happened with like a traditional politician. You needed a disruptor to come in. I don't think I've obviously never been a politician, but I don't think there's a single individual more qualified to tackle Doge's problems from a technological standpoint than Elon.
100%.
And he can bring it. He's already brought in so many smart people from all different kinds of backgrounds from all over the world that are willing to help.
Our interest payments are more than our defense budget. Like, we need to do something drastic.
Yeah.
What do you think, Omar?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much money they've really saved yet. I do think a legislative approach will also need to be paired with what they're doing. But there is quite a bit they can do in the executive branch. I mean, you know, if you're like me and you're someone who wasn't necessarily a Trump voter, you should be so excited that Elon is getting involved in government. I mean, that's something to me is like, here's somebody who's really demonstrated competence. We talked about Twitter, where he bought it. Everyone blasted him. They made fun of him. He's raising out a $44 billion valuation. The company is sustainably profitable, which it never was before. You look at Tesla, you look at SpaceX, across the board, a track record of efficiency. He has employed what he calls the algorithm throughout these companies. Question every requirement. So does the government really need to do this? We don't think about it, but when the government is taxing us, taking money out of the economy and spending it, that actually hurts the economy. Less goods and services are produced. So if you can question whether the government really needs to do something, step 2, delete any part or process you can. Step 3, simplify and optimize. This should come after step 2. A common mistake is to simplify and optimize a part or process that shouldn't exist. Then accelerate and automate. I mean, people don't realize this, but yeah, when the government is taking money out of your paycheck, that's goods and services you're not consuming. They're wasting it. They're borrowing, which the government is ultimately competing for capital with the private market, right? All the private companies that need capital, that investor capital is often going to bonds because they're much more safe compared to corporate bonds or equities or other forms of investment. So that's the side that isn't really getting talked about a lot. You're hearing so much about, oh my God, what these guys are doing is the end of the world. Nothing's ever going to be the same again. But nobody's really talking about the fact that the benefits of getting the budget more balanced, or at least, you know, not a multi-trillion-dollar deficit. Hey, if they can get the deficit under $1 trillion, that's great. You know, I'd consider that a huge victory. You know, $1 trillion in interest. Okay. Not even paying for anything. $1 trillion taken out of our paychecks just to pay for interest. This is really important to do. And nobody's been able to touch it. Since I've been a kid, since I've been in high school, people have been saying the deficit, do something about the deficit. No one had the courage to do anything about it. And you can see why. When you try and attack the deficit, people want to kill you. People scream bloody murder. Honestly, it takes a lot of courage to do it. But somebody's got to do something. You know, if he just ruins the government, The next administration can come in, a new Congress can come in, and they can try and fix it. But given this guy's track record, I'm surprised that more people aren't excited about us tackling a problem that we've been facing for over a decade now. And I don't think that most people have the economic understanding to be able to realize how beneficial it is when you actually balance the budget, have a more efficient government, and put more money in the pockets of the American consumer.
Can we play a very quick game? I ran a couple queries through Grok 3 yesterday with deep search. Okay, and my question was, what percentage of the U.S. GDP, yearly GDP, is directly correlated to government spending at the federal, local, and state level? Can you guys take a guess? So GDP is 20 trillion in the U.S. What do you guys think what do you think government spending in the United States is as a percentage of GDP?
30 to 40%.
What do you think of?
28%.
Sawyer?
I'd be in the 20s, yeah.
32%. 32% of our GDP is directly related to the government spending. So the question becomes, and this is what happens when you have an engineer actually trying to fix shit in government. These questions don't get asked, right? The question becomes, are we sure as a country we want 32% of our GDP to be set aside for government expenditures? And how much does that take out, to Omar's point, from the private sector, from the generation of goods, the generation of services that are significantly more efficient than a government body that's going to be by default less capable of generating an efficient outcome than the private industry, than the private sector, right? These are the questions that don't get brought up. And this is one of the huge benefits of having somebody like Elon with his brain, is that these types of discussions can now start to happen. It's like, fundamentally speaking, from a first principles perspective, how should the United States run? What is the United States goal? We have 20 trillion in GDP. How should that be allocated between private and public, right? That question can now be asked.
And I think the key here is, you take $100 and you give it to Gav, he's going to go buy something that he wants. Maybe some new AirPods. Maybe he'll buy a plane ticket somewhere he wants to go. He is expressing with that money something that's actually useful to people, goods and services people want. Whereas with the government, that same $100, you give it to them through taxation, they're going to waste $97 and maybe put $3 towards something that's actually useful for people.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about the Doge dividend? I'm honestly, I'm not sure about that, because part of me, if they're going to have all these savings with Doge, throw it at the deficit. Like, why send out sort of like stimulus checks almost? Just send it towards the deficit. That was the goal, to reduce the deficit.
I have a pro and con. So my pro is, I think, to generate trust and goodwill with the American public that the government is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. I think it makes sense to say, yo, sorry for wasting your money for the last 60 years or 20 years and 40 years. Here's a cut back, right? But I'm only pro that if we are in a position where the deficit is fully under control and we have a consistent trend down, and the dividend doesn't add money to the supply. You're just reallocating it being wasted in government, and instead giving it to the
you wouldn't want
citizenry.
inflation. Yeah,
it has to be balanced.
I'm not personally in favor. I get it with the idea, but I don't think that the last stimulus checks that we had that have gone out for most things have necessarily been effective, have led to smart spending and stuff like that. I'd rather people who save that money. I'd rather people who save that money figure out an effective way to spend it. Just giving out money to people, it's not typically the most successful strategy that I've seen.
It's our money, though.
I mean, it feels to me like a way to kind of buy support. If you send everyone a check, everyone's going to be happy. And a lot of people are going to say, good job, guys. You really send me this check. But of course, inflation is still a concern. It's definitely going to be inflationary. What I would do is I would pass a law that says Americans get a $1,000 check every year that progress is made towards reducing the deficit or something like that. Or, if we achieve a balanced budget, if you tie it to some sort of goal, then maybe it actually becomes a way for Americans to exert political pressure on Congress to actually take action as opposed to doing nothing, which is what we've seen for the last 10 years.
The more successful Doge is, the more money Americans get. That's interesting.
That could be interesting.
But okay, let me reframe it though, y'all. So it's not that what money Americans get, okay? It's less money that Americans have to pay the government. I think that this is like a check from the government is just returning the money that you paid them. That's like when people say, "Oh, I got money from my tax returns." Like, no, the government held it tax free, or they held it interest free. That's your money. You know.
Well,
Look, I mean, when you reduce
they made interest on it.
They made it. Yeah, you didn't make it. They made interest. Exactly.
When you reduce government spending, one way or another, it always translates to savings for the taxpayer. So it may not be one lump sum check, but the more you spend as a government, the more you have to tax people long term. It may not be this year or that year, maybe this tax or that tax, but savings to government spending always come back to the taxpayer ultimately.
I think a lot of what we're discussing is how do you actually motivate Congress? And I'm hoping that once we get to the legislative side of things, that's when they move towards term limits, reviews, right? Some type of structure as to, okay, you can't just get elected. I mean, Congress is the only position in the world, right, where you get to vote to increase your salary. And you just don't have a term limit and you can just sit there forever. You don't really have to seem to do that much. There's just a lot of pieces there that I think can be made more efficient. And then that's going to trickle down into all the other things that we're talking about, spending, deficits, taxes, all those other pieces. It trickles down, right?
Exactly. And this is where I get so frustrated when people are like, hey, what the executive branch is doing is unconstitutional because it's going against the will of Congress. I'm like, you guys, Congress has a blank check and they're there forever and they answer to nobody. Like, where's the check and balance for Congress?
You have so many pieces. I mean, even a day or two ago, Zelensky, who he's like, hey, Donald Trump keeps saying that you gave us 175 million, but I only got 75 million. And it's just like, okay, where's the other 100 million? Billion. Yeah. Where's the other 100 billion going? And other pieces like that. You had a lot of things with Gavin Newsom, right, where they had money allocated for homelessness and other areas. And it's like, where did it freaking get spent? Can we see some details? Can we have some accountability? Exactly. I think that's the message here. Bigger than, we're going to save a little bit of money here and there. It's a bigger mission that is yet to come, but it's starting with breaking some things. And so I think my final question for you guys on the topic is, what do you think is the worst case scenario of everything that Elon's doing with Doge?
It's a great question. By the way, the term limit thing is such a good, it's like, I've been on this train for so long. Term limits will fix 90% of our problems because you actually get Congress that's aligned with the will of the people instead of being captured by the bureaucracy and special interests, right? They're not there forever. Like your Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, these kinds of politicians cease to exist. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders.
Mitch McConnell has been in Congress longer than I've been alive.
How crazy is that? Right? It's okay. Back to your question. The worst case scenario.
We have 90-year-old senators like Chuck Grassley. I think is 91.
Yeah. The average age of Senate, I think, is like 68 or 69 or something.
And it's
above
only
the
increasing
retirement
rapidly.
How can Chuck Grassley, who's 91, possibly understand the issues and problems that a 20-year-old is having? Does he understand technology well?
Artificial intelligence.
It's hard to relate to people that are 70 years younger than you are.
100%. And that's one of the things that gets me excited about the Trump presidency. It's such a massive it's shifting the. I mean, Trump is pretty old. He's 78 himself. He's very, very sharp. Like him and Biden are two completely different animals, literally. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Doge. The worst thing that can happen to Doge. So Elon continues on his chaos crusade. He claims all these savings, and then it falls through the legislative process. Almost nothing gets stuck. And then this is a huge black eye on the Trump presidency and a huge black eye on Elon's ability to enact change through the government, right? The deficit continues. the interest payments go up, and it turns into a giant failure. Trump leaves office with a historically low approval rating. And Elon is not only viewed as a person that completely failed by an entire one side of the political spectrum with the Democrats, but then he also has nothing to show for on the other side. And so he would have this giant blemish that says, yeah, he did reusable rockets, he did X, he did Tesla, but see, when it comes to politics, he's terrible. So nothing he says from a politics perspective should ever be listened to ever again. He loses power and influence, which lowers his ability to enact positive change, let's say, from his perspective for the forwarding of humanity. That's, and I mean, I don't even want to talk about the true worst case scenario because it's too dark to think about. So,
yeah, I mean, in my head, it's the worst case scenario is as they're going through these cuts, they cut the wrong people and it just severely backfires. I think that's kind of like, for me, worst case scenario. You're trying to do the right thing, but you dig a deeper hole. Omar?
Yeah, I mean, I don't worry too much about that. I think people can always be hired back. The biggest risk, I think, is really just that they failed to make any progress on the deficit, that the deficit actually increases. And depending on Trump's tax policy and other factors, black swan events like COVID, they may or may not make any progress towards the deficit. And I mean, man, if Elon thought launching rockets was hard, trying to fix the government is making it look easy. But he never started any of his companies because he thought this chance of success was high or that it was easy. He thought that Tesla would fail. When he told people he was starting a rocket company, people told him, "Are you nuts?" They showed him videos of rockets exploding. No one thought that it would become the best, most advanced rocket in the world. And it's a similar thing with the federal government. It feels like this insurmountable task. But when something's important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. That's one of his favorite lines. And I think it really applies here. Is he going to succeed? I don't know. I mean, this is really one of the toughest challenges he's faced in his career. And it's been a hell of a career. But somebody's got to do something. And honestly, I can't think of anybody with thick enough skin and the expertise needed who could actually do this other than Elon. So I'm really glad that he's trying. Whether he succeeds or not, whether people make fun of him for, failing to reduce the deficit, we'll have to see how this ultimately turns out. But I mean, you see so many cases where people told this guy, you can't do it. They just attacked him. I mean, look at Twitter. Oh, you're forced to buy this. This guy's ruined. Look, the valuation has dropped so much. And then look at where they are today, raising at a $44 billion valuation, deciding elections. They've sold their bonds at 97 cents of the dollar. The banks have. X is more profitable than ever. How many people said that during all the hysteria about him buying X? I bet the valuation will go up and they'll actually, make Twitter profitable for the first time. But that's what he did. So
Apple and Amazon are even now back advertising. Like, that's a huge statement from two of the largest companies in the world.
Yeah. That's why I think real quick, one other downside Doge. I really think political violence is like a 1% chance, but I think we need to throw it out there as a potential thing too. But I think the in my eyes, there is a higher likelihood chance of success than not, because again, the low hanging fruit is unbelievable in the federal government. Just like Twitter was a bureaucratic mess. It was a disaster, right? The government is a proxy for that in the public sector. So it's like, for me, it's like, I think if he can get past, which he has in the past, and the Trump admin can get past through the noise and just get down to brass tacks and figure out how to work together to actually push this stuff through, the opportunity is, they're endless. And the only thing that would stop it is like literally just politics. Every side will win here. Like the Democrats and Republicans will both be able to claim cost savings, dramatic cost savings, because the entire system has been such a disaster for so long. And so from that perspective, is like the low-hanging fruit potential is unbelievable, which in itself, paired with his track record, I would find it hard to believe there won't be some sort of significant improvements that come from Doge.
I think we're all Tesla guys, Tesla fans. I think we got to touch on the potential impact here on Tesla.
Oh yeah.
with what Elon is doing in Doge, it's disrupting a lot of stuff and it's pissing off a lot of people. I mean, what kind of impact does this have on Tesla? Short term, medium term, maybe long term, but I think more short term and medium term is maybe the discussion to have.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, there's the ton going on, a lot of different pieces. I do want to move into some closing thoughts from you guys. I know we didn't even get to talk about Grok 3 on here, which in the midst of all of this might have been the biggest news, right, as that's coming out. So I'll just roll around, see if you guys have any general final thoughts, perhaps on Tesla, Doge, Elon, Grok 3. Omar, you want to go first?
Well, you do see a lot of people saying this is going to be the end of the world for Tesla. Nobody will ever want to buy their cars again. Tesla's a global company. What do Chinese people think about this? I don't know. They're probably not even hearing about it. And there will be some backlash short term. But ultimately, this is something that when you look at the fourth quarter, Tesla delivered more cars than they ever have in their history. They delivered 495,000 cars. And they were able to do that by offering a lot of incentives. So what that tells me is there is significant demand for Tesla vehicles, but people just want them to be cheaper. And perhaps the most important thing that Elon could be doing is if they can get the government spending under control, if they can tame inflation and the aggregate demand that government spending is adding to the economy, the Fed will have to bring down rates. And if rates are lower long term, then that is possibly the most significant thing for Tesla growth as we move into the robotaxi age. So for these Democrats who are saying they're never going to boycott, they're going to boycott Tesla, they're never buying from them again. Let's see how that holds up when Tesla is the dominant player in autonomy. I think really for those of us who are not completely partisan, it's more important to support Tesla now than ever. Is clean energy any less important now than it was last year? No. Is clean air any less important? Sustainable transport, making the vehicles of the future here in America? No. It's more important than ever. But now you've got Democrats railing against them, Republicans who love fossil fuels railing against them, and there are very few people actually standing up and saying, you know what? This is a great company. This is an asset to America, and it does not make sense to destroy it for revenge against Elon Musk. We're only really hurting ourselves. We're hurting American workers. And, I think the way that people look back on all this will be very different than what they're feeling in the heat of the moment. Ultimately, the results will dictate how people feel. And Elon is somebody who has always exceeded my expectations for what he can achieve. I mean, you look at Grok 3. I'm a huge Elon fan. People sometimes get mad at me for being too supportive of him. And sometimes. I didn't expect him to have the number one LLM. I thought, Grok 3, they're still playing catch up to OpenAI. They leapfrogged them. So this guy's continually exceeding everyone's expectations. And I wouldn't count him out yet with everything we're seeing in politics and Doge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think short term, there will be some impact to vehicle sales in Europe and North America. I think that's a reasonable expectation. I think we're already seeing that. To what extent? I don't know. It's hard to sort of quantify. I don't think, the amount of Democrats that aren't buying Teslas are, the amount of Republicans that might buy Teslas and EVs now is, I don't think that's going to offset the loss of potential sales from Democrat. Having said that, long term, I don't think it matters that much if we're sort of in an autonomous robotaxi world. I think ultimately people will just choose the cheapest robotaxi, the best experience. And I think that's what Tesla's going to bring with the Cybercab. So while short term, there's definitely going to be some bumpiness. And certainly the headlines are going to suck every quarter. The vehicle sales were this and that, and it didn't match to this. And, they're going to blame it on Elon, obviously, every time. But I think long term, Tesla will be okay.
The way I view it is even if robotaxi or autonomy wasn't in the near term for Tesla, I still think the loss of sales from politically motivated things is overblown, vastly overblown. If I look at what are some of the worst PR disasters of recent memory that were politically driven? right? Dylan Mulvaney with Bud Light. You had the whole Disney thing with the whole wokeness stuff,
Yeah,
right?
but buying a beer is different than a car, though. A car is quite an emotional purchase and often one of the biggest things that someone will ever buy. So I don't know.
So if you were to quantify it, how big of an impact do you think it is?
Well, Elon said 20 to 30% vehicle volume delivery growth this year. I'd be shocked if it was bigger than 10%.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I think it's undeniable that there are some people who might have bought a Tesla who will buy something else. But at the same time, you look at Rivian sales, they were flat last year and they just guided flat to down again.
You don't think that's
everybody
a
loves
issue,
Rivian.
though?
Everybody loves the product. Nobody's mad at RJ's tweets, but there's still that economic reality. And although politics is a factor, I do agree with Farzad that it's so dramatic that it's being discussed much more than other factors, such as, for example, the Model Y being updated this year and people knowing that last year, you know, with the new Model 3 coming out. So I like low expectations. I like everyone coming into this and saying, oh, there's no way Tesla sales can grow when they've got products like the new Model Y, new, more affordable models, and FSD unsupervised coming to market.
And I'll give you another sort of variable too, is like, I go back to who are the people that can afford to make a purchasing decision that is guided by their moral lens and their politics. It's people that have money, right? People that don't have that much disposable income, they don't have time to pay attention to this bullshit. They're just like, what is the thing that's going to make me the happiest, that's going to get me what I need, and to get me from point A to point B? What's the result I'm looking for here? And from that perspective, 95% of those buyers are going to look at Tesla as a Tesla. They're not going to look at it as like, oh my God, what kind of statement am I looking to make here with this vehicle? Most people just don't have the time and they don't care. And that's the market Tesla is solidly in and will accelerate itself into. It's going to be the average to bottom half of the market, which was the goal from the very, very beginning.
People
So
should
from that
just buy the
perspective,
best product, the safest product. That's a Tesla. Simple.
did people stop using
Don't
Amazon
bring
when?
politics into it.
Yeah, like remember when Bezos was enemy number one of legacy media? How many years ago? Like rich billionaires going after terrible work practices. People should boycott Amazon. What happened to Amazon? Nothing. It's
Boycotts
overblown
tend
in
to
my
not
opinion.
last that long.
Yeah, people move on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really have a lot of respect for the Democrats who say, Elon, I hate you. I totally disagree with what you're saying, but I support this company. This is an American company. They're doing great things for the country, for the world. And that's
most
so
Democrats.
important. So few people can really divorce themselves from politics like that. But I think it's just really crucial now more than ever. I mean, you look at what's going on in China. Whether we have an American auto industry at all, I think is really going to be dependent on the work that Tesla's doing. So, I mean, Elon was a Democrat. He voted for Biden. He voted for Obama. My recommendation to Democrats, which, I considered myself a Democrat until very recently when they started picking fights with Elon, but these are the guys we should be trying to win back. We shouldn't be destroying them. We should be putting out great candidates and great policies that win Tesla fans, Elon fans, and Elon himself back to the party. And hopefully over time, the strategy will shift in a more constructive direction and less of a let's get revenge direction.
You make a good point about... Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Omar, you make a good point about the American jobs thing. When you buy a Tesla, every Tesla built in America or sold in America is built in America. They make the most American-made vehicles. And, like the Cadillac Optic EV, Chevy Equinox EV, Ford Mach-E, Chevy Blazer EV, all of them are built in Mexico. You're supporting American jobs when you buy a Tesla, more than probably any other brand.
And like it or not, Elon, those for people that hate him, Elon is the single most important piece for our national security long term. SpaceX, okay, Starlink, Tesla, by building out a supply chain for energy, that's going to allow us to diversify away from China. It being the unipolar sort of thing in the next 20 years unless we figure out how to take industry away from them and bring it on shore. Like this is such a great point. Like it shouldn't be like, oh, screw Elon, go away, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, let's come together. Let's figure out, everybody come together. We're all Americans here. Let's figure out how to make it work. We have major disagreements, we get off the rails sometimes. But the truth of the matter is when we come together and enable the people that are actual true builders that are building the future in a positive way, if we figure out how to empower them and work together with them, that's going to make it and the entirety of the country win long term. And that is by far the most important thing, especially when you have China that is absolutely dead set in dominating supply chain and dominating manufacturing. If we don't step our shit up and leverage our secret weapon, we are going to lose. That's what it comes down to.
And let me let you guys in on a little secret. Tesla and SpaceX are not owned by Elon Musk. They're owned by America. Elon owns less than 20% of Tesla. If you're an investor who has an S&P 500 index fund, you own a piece of Tesla. Every American's 401k. When Elon is dead or on Mars, Tesla will still be here and still be owned by the United States. So to go and hurt the American worker who is making those cars in California, probably a Democrat, and to go and hurt them because you think Elon is going to care and stop if he has a $250 billion net worth instead of a $300 billion net worth. It's just political hysteria.
Yeah, even actually even if your car is made in Texas, Austin, Texas, it's pretty liberal around there too. Yeah.
It's great points. A lot that we went over today. I really enjoyed this episode because honestly, we didn't really get technical at all today. I think this was more of a, here's our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, what we hope for, what we want to see in this country, bring people together. This is the mission. So I hope everybody that tuned in really enjoyed hearing our thoughts. We appreciate all the feedback that we've been getting as well. We've tried to make updates throughout each pod, shifting a little bit. There was so much good back and forth today between the whole crew. And so this is what I'd love to continue to see. If you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and like and subscribe. If you're on X, give that video a like, retweet, share it out, comment your favorite part of the video for us. We love seeing people watching it, throwing it up on their big screen, XTV. It's amazing. Thank you so much to our editors as well, David Carbutt and his entire team, the back-end team with Evan, Sam, everyone else that's making this possible. If you're watching this on Farzad's channel, make sure that you're checking out all of his other videos. Block out the rest of your day. That's going to be a good mission for you to go check all those out. Thank you to the rest of the guys here, Omar, Sawyer, Farzad. It's always a pleasure. Really looking forward to the next one. Take care, everybody.